Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to be looking at how to make your own homemade wine very cheaply, quickly, and inexpensively. After the instructional part of the winemaking is over, stick around because I have a referral for you for a good book. And I also have some helpful hints on some other aspects of fermentation in the home. Also guys, one thing about watching my videos is I tend to be an attention to detail person. As you may have noticed, this video is about 30 minutes long. That's a great thing about YouTube. If that's too long for you, and you know now, so you can change the channel and go find someone else to show you how to do it. But that's just my style, that's the way I do it. I show you all the different steps, and generally speaking, pay a lot of attention to detail. So if you're wondering why the video is so long, there you go. Well, hello YouTube! Hey guys, it's Fletch. Welcome back to the Big Sky Tactical Channel. Today we're going to be looking at brewing your own wine, or fermenting your own wine. And for those of you that might be wondering, oh Fletch, I thought you were a man of faith. Why are you promoting alcoholism and drinking wine and all that yippee skippy stuff? Well, first of all, back then they didn't have refrigeration. So if you let wine sit around for, whether it's quote-unquote new wine or not, if you let grape juice sit around for any length of time, it would ferment. And when it ferments, you get wine. And thus, this is what we are doing. It's a very simple wine fermentation process. Some people call it jailhouse brew. Jailbreak brew. I've heard all kinds of different things that people call it, but basically it's just a very simple way to make your own wine. It's delicious, it tastes good, and it's much cheaper than what you can afford to buy it as well. So some things that we're going to need before we get started is if you like red wine, then you're going to need some red grape juice. What we're using here is Newman's Own. This is what I can get at my local Costco. I like this particular product because it's a no sugar added product, so there's no high fructose corn syrup or corn syrups or any other type of a GMO type product in there, which is important to me, not that it needs to be important to you, but for our family it is. We care about that. So this is what we use. And basically each one of these bottles here will make a growler full of wine. So there we go. There's our juice. The next thing that we're going to use is some organic sugar. This is evaporated cane sugar. And the reason why we use this instead of other things is, one, because it's a non-GMO. It's not a GMO turnip, or not turnip, but sugar beet rather, sugar beet. Also, it's not any type of high fructose corn syrup or any derivative thereof. So we have that. We also have organic raisins. These are going to be used for help with the fermentation process. You'll see that later. The next thing we're going to need is yeast, and we just buy it in bulk, and just any baker's yeast. Yes, you can use other yeast, specialty wine yeast like champagne yeast and different things like that, but for the purpose of what we're doing here, just good old-fashioned baker's yeast works just fine. So we've got yeast. Then we're going to need growlers, or 1 gallon glass jugs. And when I first started making my own wine, I bought a couple of the jugs, then a couple of them I got from buying organic apple cider. And if you don't want to do that and you do enjoy drinking wine, then you can just buy in these 1 gallon jugs here, like this Carlo Rossi 1 gallon growler full of sangria, just a cheap table wine, or dessert wine as some people like to call it. The next things that we're going to need are things that help with the fermentation process. So the general theory of it is that we take the grape juice, we put the grape juice in the growler, we add the sugar. The sugar is what feeds the yeast. The chemical reaction happens with the yeast eating the sugar, which creates the alcohol. The slurry that we're going to make with this organic raisins creates extra food for the yeast to get our alcohol content up high enough so that we've got some decent wine. And while that fermentation process is happening, carbon dioxide is coming up out. It passes through an air check here, or check valve, water valve, and the gases are able to escape, but no oxygen is able to get back in. And there's several different types of check valves. What I have here is this is a stopper specifically designed for 1 gallon jugs, and you can see that just goes in there like that. You can get these, each of these for a couple bucks a piece at your local brew your own store, as well as these 1 gallon jugs. I think they're about $5. That's why I started buying these, because we do enjoy drinking cheap table wine on occasion. And I think those jugs are, I don't even remember now, I think like $10. Well, half of that is just the growler, so why not buy that? And I can get some decent wine and a 1 gallon jug at the same time. So anyways, back to the airlocks, or check valve. Airlock is probably a more correct term. So there's the easiest way to do it. Another way to do it is to take a lid like this. This is the lid that came off of one of those Carlo Rossi jugs. And I took a drill, I drilled a hole through it. I put this black silicone grommet in there. And so now this second kind of airlock that I have here just works a little bit different, but same theory. Same difference, you take it, it slides down in there, then you screw that on top of your growler, which you have all of your ingredients that are in there. And obviously you want to make sure that you have the proper size lids with the proper jugs, because the lids won't fit all of them. And to give you an example of what I'm talking about, this type of a growler you can see has a little bit different lip on here, and then the threads are different because this is the lid that I just showed you right here without the hole cut in it. It doesn't thread properly onto growlers like this that have this little handle on there. The threads are different, but this type of a plug stopper will typically fit inside all of the bottles no matter where they come from. So this is, for me, this was an easier way to do it. A secondary thing is I found some of these lids at my brew your own store here locally, and you can see it's got a plastic stopper that's in there, and these lids are designed to go on pretty much any kind of a bottle, or I said bottle, 1 gallon growler. So that's something else to be aware of. These are out there and they're available. And if you want to, another thing that you can do is you can just buy straight stoppers like this. Just push in there when you're done. That's another. Fermentation is a very healthy process in moderation, as with most things in life. it is good for your body. The next thing that we need to do before we do anything else is we need to sterilize our equipment. So the way that I sterilize my bottles is I wash them, and then while they're wet, I put them in the oven. I turn the oven on while they're still, cold and wet. What you don't want to do is when the oven is hot, put cold, wet bottles into a hot oven. So put the bottles in there first when they're cold and wet. And, it's the same principle. It's old school technology. It's the same thing that they did to sterilize canning jars. And so, same process. So I'll show you that here in a second, and then we'll start mixing up our ingredients and making our wine. Alright, so I already washed out my gallon jugs, or growlers as they're called. And there they are being sterilized in the oven. You can see that some of the water that's still in them is evaporating out of them, but that's how I sterilize them. One other thing that I did want to add real quick is I believe in giving credit where credit is due. The gentleman that I learned how to do this from, and how to make it my own, so to speak, and do it in a way that works for me and our family, I think his name is Craig, actually, or at least that's the name of his channel. But it's called Craig Tube, and I'll put a link to his channel below. You can go check him out. But he does all kinds of videos that explain the different types of homebrew that you can make, the theories of airlocks and the different types of airlocks that they are, how they work, why they work, how the fermentation process works, how to make hard apple cider, the different kinds of wines, different things like that. So I'd highly encourage you to go check out Craig, and when you do, tell him that Fletch sent you. Alright guys, so I've got my growlers all washed up and sterilized. So the next step is just going to take my juice and a funnel, and of course I sterilized my stoppers and my airlocks and lids and different things like that. And using basically the same process. It comes from the canning world, and that's basically just in like a stock pot. Put some water in there, let the water boil. Throw these in there for a few seconds. Well, more than like 1001, 1002, but obviously not long enough that they're going to melt. But for say 60 seconds or something like that. And typically that's more than enough to sterilize your equipment. And my hands are thoroughly washed and clean. And like the new watch? Pretty nice, huh? Alright. You might see that again somewhere. Alright, so no need let me show you how to pour wine into the growlers, so I'll complete that and we'll be back with you. Alright, and just another quick tip. You heard me, well, I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but if I didn't, you can also do the brew right, or the winemaking process inside the bottle itself. You would just pour it out to about 3/4, something like that. Pour the rest of this off, and, drink it, give it to the kids, whatever, and use it straight in the bottle yourself. You would do the same thing. You would take your lid, you would drill a hole in the center of it, put a grommet in it, and put your airlock on top of it. Just screw it back on the bottle, and you could do it that way as well. Alright, so you can see I just poured all of the juice into the jugs. You can see it fills each one about 3/4 of the way full. As a matter of fact, it is because this particular brand, each one is 3 quarts. So there's 1 quart, just got a text message, there's still 1 quart room in there, but we're going to add the volume of 2 cups of sugar into there. So this is probably one of the more tedious tasks in this process, because the sugar kind of has a tendency to clump and to get stuck, so to speak. So we're just pouring it in there. And by the way, for those of you that don't care about whether or not your sugar is organic or non-GMO or whatever, As long as it's sugar, it'll work. And there are other sugars like powdered sugar, corn sugar, different things like that, that will dissolve a lot easier, that makes this step easier. So if that's a value to you, and this is what I use, this stopper, and put it in there, and then what you're going to do is we're going to shake it up real good. And while I'm going to shake it good, and then I'm going to set it down, and then I'm going to go do the next one. And I'll eventually come back to this one, and once it's had a chance to sit and to let the sugar dissolve, I'll shake it up real good again to make sure that we've got all the sugar dissolved. And that's also why I was telling you guys, for those of you that don't care about whether or not your sugar is organic or GMO, corn sugar, powdered sugar, different things like that dissolve a lot easier, and it just makes it a quicker step if that's something that's important to you. For me, it's not. I'm willing to take the extra time. So I'll be back with you in a sec. All right, so we've got all the sugar added into the growlers. And one very important thing, and I don't think I mentioned before, was that when you are starting with your juice needs to be at room temperature. Actually, if it's a little bit warmer than that, that would be probably even a little bit more ideal. But at least room temperature, and the reason why is because once we add the yeast to this, it allows the yeast to feed off of the sugar that we added. So the sugar is the fuel for the yeast. And next what we're going to do is we're going to create a slurry with these sun-dried organic raisins. I think any raisins will do, guys. If organic's not important to you, don't sweat it. But let me move the camera over to the stove, and I'll give you an idea of how I do this and how it works for me. So I'll be back with you in just a second. The next part isn't rocket science, because each batch you make is going to be a little bit different, because the ingredients that you're buying typically are not going to be the exact same thing every time, so every batch is going to be a little bit different. Each growler of wine will have a little bit different taste, and some of them will ferment better than others, so they'll be a little bit more stout than the others, and so on and so forth. So there isn't really any way for me to tell you exactly how to do this, but this is how I learned how to do it. Basically what I would do is I would take basically what is like a little bit of a handful of raisins, and I figured, so someone's probably going to want to know, and for me that ends up being about, this is a half cup measuring cup, so that is about 1/4 of a cup of raisins, and that's what I figured that I'm going to use per growler. And if you hear Munchkin, the attack cat, down there on the floor attacking the tripod and moving the camera, you'll know why. Alright, so I'm going to do 4 growlers, so let's see here. Try not to make a mess. So that's enough for 3, and enough for a half. Alright, now so you can see I just got them in the pot there, so I'm just going to add enough water to it that all the raisins are covered. And I'm just going to turn it up on high so that it heats up fast. And while we're doing this, guys, just another quick thing. This is a stainless steel pot, and if those of you that haven't had a chance to look into it yet or whatnot, and you're still using like your non-stick skillets and things like that, I highly recommend that you do some research into that and learn about some of the health hazards that can be from that. And you know, there's safer metals out there that we can use nowadays, like stainless steel. And so, and someone may be asking, oh Fletch, when did you get all health conscious and all that? Well, I always have been. We just haven't always had a chance to talk about it. So there's no need in keeping this on here anymore. And once it comes up to a boil, I'll bring you back over here and you can take a look at what I'm going to do next. You can see I've got the water that's coming to a boil now. I'm just going to use a mashed potato masher, potato masher, whatever you want to call it, and I'm just smashing them. And what I'm after here is that I want to get the skins and each one of the raisins to break open so that all of the good stuff inside the skins can come out and it can make us a nice slurry. And obviously turn down the heat a little bit because I don't need it up on high anymore. But I'm going to let it sit for a few more minutes and let all of the raisins soften up again. And another thing you can do is just to take a fork. If you don't have a masher, just take a fork. Same thing. Just what you're looking to do is to break open the shell or the skin of each one of these raisins that are in here so that we get a real nice thick slurry going on in here. And what the slurry is going to do is it's got lots of concentrated sugars in there, but it's also got a lot of the good stuff that's still inside the raisin or the grape because it's just dried. And what that's going to do is this is going to be a food for the yeast, kind of a turbo boost, yeast feed. Help us to get the alcohol level up in the wine, and not because we just want to get tanked from drinking this, but so that later, once the fermentation process is done, and we go back and back sweeten our wine, we can add wine to it and make it as sweet or as dry as we want, as well as if we want it to be carbonated even. So I'll let this sit in here for another, probably I'd say 5 minutes. So probably about 10 minutes tops is going to be how long that those raisins are in there. I'll bring it back up to a slow boil. And while we were doing that, guys, I just shook each one of the growlers again. And it's a pretty simple process. You put the stopper in, look at the bottom of the growler. If you can see the sugar settled back down to the bottom, obviously you need to shake it again. Sometimes it'll take 3 or 4 times, but it does always eventually dissolve. So we'll be right back in a minute. Alright, so it's been about another 5 minutes or so, and here is the slurry that we've got. Let me adjust the camera here. You can see the idea is that you want to keep the water level, so you may need to keep adding the water, but keep the water just over the skins and the whatnot in there. And the next step in what we're going to do is we're just going to let it cool down so we can touch it without getting burnt. And we'll drain off what juice will easily come off just by putting a lid on it and pouring it into a measuring cup so we get an idea of how much we're dealing with. And the next thing we'll do is we'll take the pulp, and you can either use cheesecloth like this, and if you don't have this, what works equally as well, it's just not quite as fast, as coffee filters. And we're going to put all of that in there, and then we'll squeeze the last bit of it out of there. This step in squeezing the juice out of the pulp, probably not needed. Actually, if you wanted to and you were just doing a small batch, you could throw the skins in there as well. It's not going to hurt anything. It's just more of a mess that you have to clean up later on once the fermentation process is complete. So as soon as this cools down, we'll be back. Here's what you end up with when you're done. That's the raisin pulp, what's left of it. My chickens absolutely love that stuff, so I feed that to my chickens. You could also use it in compost. Alright, and this is what we were after. Here's the gold, so to speak, and you can see there's a few chunks of stuff in there still yet. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pour it out into a container so that I can measure it to divide it evenly between my 4 growlers. Alright, so here we go. We just did one last strain of our liquid there. And again, it doesn't really matter if you get a little bit of the grape hulls, you know, from the raisins in there. Just understand that it might change the flavor of your wine if you're adding this in one time but you don't in next, and so on. So basically what you want to do until you learn this process and get a feel for what you're doing, try to do it the same way every time, so that if something changes that you don't like, that you know what caused it, or you at least have a pretty good idea what it was that would have caused it. And so, see, this time it looks like I have right at 1 cup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get, since I have 4 growlers to add it into, I'm going to get my 1/4 cup, measuring cup, and I'm going to add it in. So just added in the yeast, and basically what we're looking at for the yeast is 1 packet, if you buy the small packets, or 1 tablespoon of yeast. And you know, like I said earlier, you could use whatever you want, but obviously you want to be consistent so that you can learn how to make the wine the way that you like it and the way that it tastes good to you. So as an example, you know, if you put in 1 tablespoon of, like, you know, Red Star baker's yeast, make sure that you're using the same one in the same amount. So as an example, you know, use the back of a butter knife and, you know, clean the yeast off flat so you get an exact measurement so that you know what you're working with. Alright, so let's just start here on the end, and you can see here that there's not a white ring around the bottom here anymore. So my sugar is pretty well dissolved, so just kind of want to give it a good shake. I've got the slurry from the raisins in there. I've got the 2 cups of sugar, and I've got 1 package or 1 tablespoon of baker's yeast in there. And so I'm just going to go down the line here. And same thing there. The sugar's dissolved now. And Mrs. Fletch keeps sending me text. That's always the way it happens when I'm making a video. But it is nice that your wife loves you and wants to go to a movie with you, though, huh? Alright, so we're just going to work our way down here. And then we'll be ready to put the airlocks on each one of these and then let them sit for about 3 weeks. So it's a really fairly easy process, guys. It's really hard to do this wrong. As long as you can follow some basic instructions, there's not really a whole lot that you can do wrong as long as you're following the basic instructions. Alright guys, so I got all the stoppers in, so I'm going to add just enough water. So that as the water balances out on this airlock, where it's the same thing on both sides. And that's pretty self-explanatory. You just pour it in there, and you just got 2 lines that says max on both, and you pour the water in until it levels out. So not a big deal. And basically we're going to let this wine sit for 3 weeks. And you can already see that some of these are already pretty active. Let's see if I can zoom in on this one down here on the end. See those bubbles in there? That is the fermentation process taking place. We are already making wine. Alright guys, well thank you very much, I appreciate it. And if you're new to my channel and you've not seen any of my videos before, I tend to be an attention to detail guy. And I tend to obloviate at times, and if you don't like that and that's a problem for you, I understand, but that's a great thing about YouTube, right? You don't like my style and you don't like my attention to detail. There's plenty of other channels where you can go to get the information that you want and need the way that you want it. So I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for coming by today. Hey guys, it's Fletch. Welcome back. We've got one of our gallons of wine that we made here, and I just thought I'd share with you the final part of the process. So after the wine fermented for it's between 2 and 3 weeks, it just depends. Basically what you're looking for is to see when it stops gassing off or when the bubbles stop coming up. Once you've done that, you pour off all but probably just the last little bit, because that last little bit in there is going to have a whole bunch of sludge in there, dead yeast cells, so on. And so you pour that off, you save it, you pour it into another sanitized, clean jug. You can either drink it at that point, or you can put an air check back, air valve, airlock, whatever you want to call it, back on there and let it ferment for another couple of weeks. Or a couple months even, if you want a higher quality wine, or if you just want, a good tasting, drinkable wine. At this point, and you're going to have, about this much wine, like we talked about earlier. And then what you would do is you would just add more of the original juice product that you had, and you would fill it up, and that's what's called back sweetening. And depending on how much more juice that you decide that you want to add to it is going to depend on the final taste that your wine is going to have, how sweet it is or how dry that it tastes. That's also the reason why we want to, when we're making our wine, add the raisins to it, because that gets the alcohol content of the wine up a little bit, so that when we back sweeten it, it's not too diluted, and you're basically drinking grape juice. So, but as you can see, this was completed on December the 29th. That was a very good year, huh? December the 29th, 2014. So, we'll try a little bit of it right here. And I'll let you see, it's not the, that wine tasters thing here. It's fairly clear. But it does taste good. It has a nice, sweet, fruity taste to it. And actually, if you want to, after you've back sweetened it and you put your sealable lid on there, if you don't refrigerate it right away, what'll happen is the remaining yeast that's still in the wine will start eating the sugars out of the new juice that you've added to it, and it will carbonate your wine. So if you want it carbonated, leave it out at room temperature for a while. If you do decide to do that though, however, make sure that you burp your growlers by just cracking the lid until you hear that sound and let the gases escape out of there, because if you don't, you could end up in a potentially dangerous situation. And the reason why I'm chuckling is because this last year I had made a whole bunch of wine for my son's graduation. And even though Dad had given strict instructions that the garage door was not to be left open, the kids, just from running in and out and whatever, left the garage door open. Well, also I have a special refrigerator that I keep my wine in and beverages and different things like that. And because of the graduation, we needed the extra refrigerator space for food. So my wife, understandably, had taken the wine out and set it on the ground beside the refrigerator just for graduation. Well, with the garage door up, the sun was shining into the garage and was shining on the bottle, and it heated up the bottle. And it had been a while since it was burped or belched, so to speak, because it had been in the refrigerator. And it eventually got hot enough by the sun shining on it that one of the kids came into the garage, and I think they dropped a skateboard on the ground or something, close enough to the growler that the sound waves alone was enough for it to explode. So word to the wise, when you do make your own wine, when you're done, you do want to refrigerate it from that point on, or drink it in a fairly soon after you finished making the product. And also something along that line is that if you're the type of person that typically gets a headache from drinking wine, you may want to try something like this, because this wine does not have sulfites in it. And the sulfites for a lot of people is what actually gives you the headache that you get from drinking red wine. Some people, even one glass, it gives you a really bad headache. Well, for a lot of people, that's the sulfites that do that. And the reason why they put the sulfites in there is because that's what stops the yeast or kills off the yeast that's in the wine. That's why the wine you buy from the store is not carbonated. That's why it doesn't blow the corks out of it or anything like that. It's because of those sulfites that they add in there. So also, if you venture into deeper into winemaking, you may want to buy some of those sulfites if it doesn't bother you, so that you can add it to your wines for long-term storage, so that they don't need to be refrigerated. Well, guys, cheers. Thanks for joining me. I hope you learned something from this. And after this, I added in a few freebies for watching today, as well as a referral. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And here's another idea that I'm going to throw in for free just for watching today. So what we have here is just ball plastic storage container lids. And we'll take one out of the box, and you can see it's just a basic lid that's designed to go on there. Drill a hole right through the middle of it, like that right there. Then take one of the silicone grommet, put that silicone grommet inside there, right there in the middle where my thumb is. And you can make your own sauerkrauts. Get a 1 gallon jug or a half gallon, or even pints. And here is a silicone gasket, O-ring seal, whatever you want to call it. You can buy these off of Amazon. Just search for them. As well as silicone grommets like that. That's where I found them. And you can make your own fermented foods. So just another idea to keep in mind, some different things that you can do with fermentation. And yes, guys, by the way, I am someone that actually does the things that I tell you about on YouTube. Here is a half gallon jug of homemade sauerkraut that was made right here in my kitchen, with the lid that I showed you how to make right there on top, with an air, well, not that one, but with an airlock on it, like this. So again, free tip for watching today. Also, guys, if you've ever tried sauerkraut before, the stuff that you buy in the store or the stuff that comes in a can, it does not taste anywhere near as good as your own homemade sauerkraut, nor is it as good for you, because if you're buying it in a can, even if it comes in a jar, if it's not refrigerated when you bought it, it's pasteurized, and the pasteurization process kills all of the things that are in there that make it good for you through the fermentation process. So these need to be stored refrigerated, so that it stops the fermentation process and that preserves the flavor of the sauerkraut. Up here we've got what's left of some of the canning that we did this year that we just kept out locally so that we could use it. Some green beans, carrots, cauliflower, and then over there is some of our peach preserves that we made. And over here in the refrigerator is, you see it back there in the back, that is sauerkraut, home fermented sauerkraut. And so yeah, always important to make sure that the folks that you're taking your advice from are people that are at least walking out the things that they say that they are doing. They're actually doing them themselves instead of just parroting the things that they've heard others say. And while we're on that subject, I wanted to give a shout out to Joe Fox over at Viking Preparedness. He actually has a book out, and it's called The Prepared Family, or something like that. I'll put a link to it down below. And in his book, well, Joe is a retired major in the U.S. Army. He was Special Forces, and he also has a family. And so it's a very good book, a very good read about how to integrate both the tactical mindset of someone that has a Special Forces background, as well as a way to make it work within your family. So please go give Joe a look over there at Viking Preparedness.